Good evening, everyone. My name is Devin Herrera, and I'm the Director of College Advising here at the King's Academy. We're excited that you carved out time to be with us this evening. We have 5 panelists. You'll get to know them pretty well throughout the evening, and they are well fed. So they're excited to be with you all this evening. We're going to just give them a chance to introduce themselves quickly. We'll do kind of a quick Q&A so you get to know a little bit more about each of their institutions. We'll then give them a few minutes so they can give you a candid description of their institution, and then we'll move into the scripted portion of the Q&A, so question and answer, and then we're going to turn the floor over to you guys so you can go unscripted and you can get the questions that you want answered. And then we'll carve out some time this evening so you all can meet with them one-on-one and just ask any last-minute questions before we conclude. So that's kind of the rundown of this evening. And so if you do have any questions throughout the event, know that you will have time to ask those. We'll just simply pass around the mic. I'm going to invite my colleague, Daniela Dufresne, to just open us up in a word of prayer before we get started this evening.
All right, join me in prayer, please. Dear Jesus, we want to thank you so much for the opportunity we have together here tonight and learn a little bit more about colleges. Thank you for the institutions that are represented here. Thank you that they gave up out of their busy schedule to be with our families. And I pray that the conversations that happen tonight would just be overall uplifting and give our families a lot of clarity. Thank you for everything that you do for us, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
All right. So I've actually got a few questions for you so we can get to know the audience a little bit better. I'm just going to ask what grade level you and your child are representing this evening. So very confidently, who in the room is a freshman? Do we have any freshmen? All right. I see a few. Wonderful. Getting started early, which is on time. Amazing. What about sophomores in the room? So we see a few more hands shoot up. And what about juniors? Wonderful. All right. So that just kind of gives us some contextual framework for you guys on who you're talking to. And then does anybody in the room, will this be their first child, either the one that you're sitting by or the one that maybe you invited but didn't come, or the one that's doing homework at home? Will this be your first child to attend college? So first timers in the room. Perfect. We expected it. We're glad you are here. Hopefully, all of you are feeling like you're walking away with some new tidbits and then some overall just an understanding of how the process works. So now I'm going to turn the floor over to our panelists. I'm going to ask them a few questions so you can get to know their institutions a little bit more. We found as we've done these events that there are some similarities and differences for every school represented here. And so we'll do that right after I give the floor over to each of them to introduce themselves. So Kaylee, would you mind? So what we'd like to hear from everyone is just name, institution, and your title.
Good evening, you guys. My name is Kaylee Coward. I am representing Baylor University, which is located in Waco, Texas, for those of y'all that may have not heard of it before. And I serve in the role as admissions coordinator.
My name is Orlando Fleming. I'm the Southeast Regional Coordinator for the University of Maryland, College Park. And I'm actually regionally based, so I live in Port St. Lucie, an hour north of here.
Good evening. My name is Beth Seguil, and I'm the Assistant Director for In-State Recruitment for the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dave Morin, and I am Regional Director of Admission for Southern Methodist University, SMU, in Dallas, Texas.
And my name is Scott Van Loo. I serve as the Vice President for Enrollment at Cedarville University in Cedarville, Ohio, and I'm here representing the Midwest.
All right. So how we're going to spend our next few minutes is just by asking you some simple questions, and you're just going to raise your hand if it applies, okay? So if you could kindly just raise your hand if you're a private institution, okay? Any Christian schools represented, okay? And then located in an urban area, so metropolitan area, okay? And then regarding size, raise your hand if you have less than 5,000 students. What about less than 15,000? Perfect. And then I'm assuming the three of you have more than 15,000, right? Okay. How many of you on the panel have 100 or more majors offered at your institution? Okay. And which of you will require test scores for freshman applicants, at least for next year? Okay. Who on the panel requires teacher recommendation letters? Who on the panel is a rolling admission school? Okay. And then for those of you who didn't raise your hands, you have set deadlines, firm, hard, set deadlines. Okay. And then I'm curious, so many of you have over 100 majors. The other one probably has nearly 100 majors. Who feels like they have the most interesting college major? I love it. Okay, Beth, please share.
I would bring up two. One, we have an amazing entomology program, which, believe it or not, gets you ready for med school. But if you are interested in learning about being a firefighter, our UF Online program in fire studies, you can get a master's program and a degree in that. It's fascinating.
Wonderful. Thanks, Beth. Can anyone one-up her? Everyone's polite, but Olander.
Well, you sparked with the firefighting thing. We have fire protection engineering. So if you love to burn things down, that is the perfect major to get involved in. That's a brief overview of it.
All right, awesome. So now I would like you to tell us everything else about your institutions in about 3 minutes or less. So anything else about Baylor, University of Maryland, College Park, and we'll just pass the mic down. So just kind of give us the bird's eye view of your school so these folks feel like at least they got a little bit of a taste of 5 schools that are represented this evening.
Course. So I will do my best to include what I can, just some of our highlights. And then again, if y'all have questions after, feel free to come find me. But again, Baylor University, we're located in Waco, Texas. We are a mid-sized private institution and we are religiously affiliated. So we were founded as a Baptist institution. That is something that we still continue today. So our students really get to kind of jump into their faith. There's a lot of really great classes and different majors or minors that you can get plugged in if you're really interested in that religious aspect. Now, as far as our majors and some of our more larger departments, I would say something Baylor is really well known for is a lot of our pre-med or science programs. We are an R1 institution, so some of y'all may have, heard of R1 before. If not, it really just means that we have the highest level of research available to students your freshman year. Some of these larger institutions do have it. Baylor is one of only 37 private institutions that is R1. So that's something that we always like to say. But again, within that R1 status, it just gives our students a lot of opportunity, either in those pre-med medical fields, as well as engineering and computer science. So those are two of our larger departments. We're also really well known for business as well. And then, of course, we do have D1 athletics. So if I have any sports fans in the room, you may have heard about Baylor just through basketball, football. We had some really good teams this year and previously as well. So that's a really cool thing that a lot of students love to plug into and a good way to get involved in that student experience.
University of Maryland, College Park. So we are located 8 miles northeast of Washington, D.C. That's one of the biggest reasons why students from down here in Florida love to go up to our campus, because you have the world's most powerful city right there in your backyard or right off the metro station. 20, 25 minutes gets you there for those internship research opportunities, even preparation if you want to go to an embassy before you study abroad. And so you can have plenty of opportunities outside of the classroom for experiential learning. We have about 30,000 students, 800 clubs and organizations, your traditional Greek organizations as well, over 50 of them. Division I Big Ten Conference, which starting next year is going to be the nation's only coast-to-coast conference. So we're looking forward to that. What we're looking for from students, though, are those that love to think outside of the box, or like a play on our mascot, Testudo the Turtle, think outside of the shell. And so some of you probably put on different products of alum. I see one here, which Under Armour was founded in our Smith School of Business. One of the co-founders of Google is a Maryland alum as well. I usually bring Kermit the Frog with me because Jim Henson designed the Muppets while he was a student on campus. So lots of innovative ideas. I just found out, actually saw a video last week of some students with artificial intelligence on cameras. They actually designed a sweatshirt that is an invisible cloak. So any artificial program cannot detect a human if they put this sweatshirt on. So pretty neat that our undergraduate students are able to put their thoughts together and create some innovative ideas like that.
So living in the state of Florida, I'm sure you've never heard of us. We're about 4 to 4.5 hours north of here in north central Florida, just after the Turnpike ends. We are the home of the Gators, and we are also a Division I sports team as well. UF is a large campus with a large student population, but we have a lot of opportunities that we offer up to our students as a result of being a large school. We have all these things that students can do, whether it's educational or even community-based, and finding their place at home there. When a student applies to the University of Florida, they're actually applying to the freshman class. They will indicate a major, but they are not married to that major, which gives them the opportunity to be able to learn and grow and change their mind if they want to do so, so that they're not stuck doing what they want, what they decide at 17 to do for the rest of their lives, if that's not what they want to do or what they feel led to do. We also are very interested in artificial intelligence, and we have a certificate program going on right now across every major where students can earn a certificate in artificial intelligence with an emphasis in what they're studying. So even something as far removed as fine arts would have an emphasis within this program where they are learning how artificial intelligence could be used within their field. It's something we're very excited about. We also have the HyperGator, which is our supercomputer, which, you know, with the asterisks next to it until someone builds something bigger or better, we have the fastest supercomputer on any college campus in the country. And yes, our students do have access to it. We're also an R1 school like Baylor is, which means we do a ton of research. We are a land, sea, and space grant university. There are only 17 in the country that are all three, and we're one of them, which means that if you are interested in research, you can start doing that as soon as your freshman year, if that's your jam. So that's just a little bit about us.
Hey everyone, Dave again. I'm with SMU, Southern Methodist University. We are a medium-sized, beautiful campus in the amazing city of Dallas. So about 7,000 undergraduates, roughly about 12,000 total overall students. Dallas is an incredible place to go to college, particularly for things like business and engineering and healthcare. Over 20 Fortune 500 companies in the area. To put it into perspective, roughly about 7 million people in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, but only about 7,000 students who are undergraduates at our school. So you really have the best of both worlds, where you have that nice, medium-sized, gorgeous campus, but access right there at your doorstep to this amazing city. In terms of religious opportunities and kind of what that looks like, there's a lot of options for you. So we have an office of the chaplain in religious life. So students pursue things like joining clubs and organizations. There's Mustangs for Christ. There's campus ministries, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Young Life, much more. And I really want to emphasize that word Methodist always confuses everyone, right? So SMU stands for Southern Methodist University. We were founded by the Methodist Church, but you definitely do not have to be Methodist to come to SMU. We welcome everyone, have folks of all different religions, so we welcome all. Very popular school of business in particular. You can study things like finance and alternative asset management and accounting and much more. School of Performing Arts for like dance, theater, music, all of that. Popular majors, things like biophysical science and psychology and many, many more. Creative majors like my favorite, which is creative computing, and then also fashion media, which is a journalism program for those who have a passion for fashion. Also, when you live on campus, the first 2 years are required to live on campus in our residential commons. We have faculty and residents there to support you, so professors that are there as mentors and as support. So it's just an amazing place. Hope you get the chance to come out and visit. Last thing I'll say, Division I sports, and we're excited to join the ACC conference this year. So Stanford, Cal, and SMU are all making that shift over, so incredible sports town, so come see Dallas.
So Cedarville University, we are a Christian university located in Ohio. We have 4,000 traditional undergraduate students. Next year will be close to 6,000 total students. That would also include graduate and dual enrolled students. We have grown substantially in the last 7 to 8 years, where we moved from 3,000 undergrads to over 4,000 next year. And we recruit students from all across the country. 35% of our students come from Ohio, 65% of our students come from outside of the state, as well as from 40+ countries across the world. And so what makes Cedarville distinct is that we are committed to seeing students grow in their faith while they are students, but also pursue academic excellence in submission to biblical authority. And so the way we do that is that our faculty are going to be a Christian faculty that teach you to not only be excellent in your field of study, but also are faculty that are going to help disciple you. Because if you are to apply to Cedarville, we do ask for a profession of faith. We ask, are you a Christian? And so therefore that kind of gives you an idea of the climate and the discipleship environment of our institution. When you look at the various activities or majors or programs that we have over 400 students in our direct admit nursing program, where you can be direct admitted as an incoming freshman, depending on where you land with your test scores as well as your GPA. We also have engineering programs, cybersecurity, which is an NSA Center for Excellence. We also just built a $40 million business facility that is going to house all of our business majors and programs. And so if you were to look at us online, you would see that we have a lot of the majors that you would be interested in. It's around 80 majors. We communicate 175 programs of study. And the other distinctives of Cedarville is that if you were to attend, you would be taking a Bible minor alongside every student because all of our students leave. And that's because we want to see you, when you graduate, not only be ready and prepared for the vocation that God has called you to, using your skills, gifts, and abilities, but also being ready to be a light in the world. And so that's why we blend both the academic excellence as well as pouring into you as a student in your faith so that you're ready for what God has next.
All right, so thank you so much for those high-level overviews. There's a lot more details I'm sure that we can uncover, but one thing that I think Mrs. Dufresne would attest to alongside myself is we get inspired that we wish we could go back to school pretty much every day. So if you're a parent in the room, I would imagine that you're like, oh my gosh, that was so neat. Like, I wish I could have taken advantage of that. And then hopefully if you're a student in the room, some of the information that you heard sparks and lights a fire of, oh my goodness, that's really interesting. I didn't even know that existed. So that way you're just getting more and more excited about the next few years of your life. Certainly, it's no surprise to Mrs. Dufresne and I that sometimes when we walk inside of a room, be it a classroom, that we can sometimes solicit a little bit of stress and anxiety. And so the heart behind our program this evening is just to let you know some information, some options, and that Mrs. Dufresne and I are here to support you long after these fine folks on the panel leave. So do know that we want this evening to just be filled with excitement and exploration. So on that note, I'm going to transition to our first topic of conversation, which is going to be college exploration. We had folks in the room raise their hand as far as what grade level they're representing this evening, and I would say the majority would sit into the freshman or sophomore grade level. And so on that note, we felt like college exploration was pretty important. So getting on campus and getting a feel for a campus is something that you would probably all attest to is very important. So in your professional opinions, when is the best time to visit a college campus? And then maybe specifically talking to prior to applying or after, pros and cons of both. So it's whoever wants to grab it.
So if you're visiting from Ohio from Florida, avoid November through February. And actually, one of the standing jokes I have is that if we have a nice day in February or March, I try to convince people that are visiting from Florida for our major visitor days that the weather is always 70 degrees. But honestly, the thing for me personally when I answer this question is I didn't follow the script when I was a student way back when I was considering college or university. But what I like to recommend to students is that starting in your junior year, and you can explore in your sophomore year too, but really heading into the start of your junior year, if you can start visiting campuses and get a sense for what you're looking for, whether that is in the fall or the spring, it'll really help you decide which schools you want to apply to and those that you really want to pursue. And it'll also start helping you narrow down the options. At Cedarville, where we see most students seriously starting to visit is juniors starting about October, November, and then moving into the spring. And then we also see them come back a lot of times as seniors to visit if we're one of the schools that stood out in their initial round of visits.
I'm going to jump in. I agree with everything that you said, 100%. Sometimes, however, we know that it's difficult for time-wise to get up to a university or financially to get up to a university. So, although I love it when our students come ahead of time, absolutely love it. One of the things that UF does, for example, and I'm sure a lot of the other universities do as well, is that we have events for admitted students to come to that very specifically goes over not just the basic campus tour, although that's definitely included in, but you get to go and have a sit down with the college that you're interested in majoring in. Or you get to learn more about the different opportunities on campus for clubs and organizations. Or you might get to sit down and learn more about the honors program. There are all sorts of different things that you can do that are very specific. So here's what I would say. If you are unable to go before you apply, once you are admitted to universities, assuming plural, if you are able to go and make a visit at that time to one of those special days, there's a lot to be gained from it. And at the same time, you're also seeing real life students because they help out in these activities and they're all milling around campus and doing their thing. You get to see a little bit of a slice of real life as to what it's like, as well as to have all these very focused events that tell you more information. So that if you can't do it before, definitely try and do it afterwards. And the last thing I'll add is if it still is something that you're unable to do, YouTube is wonderful about having all sorts of videos where students have made them. I'm sure TikTok does too. But there are all sorts of videos that talk about what it's like to be a student at a campus. And I would recommend reviewing those as well if you're unable to go to campus.
And along the lines of seeing real life students, I do think that's really important, is going at a time when class is in session or when students are going to be on campus. So I know when I was looking at colleges, I went a couple of different times. The first time was over the summer, and that was great just to see the campus itself, kind of get a feel for the university. But I think what really helped me in my decision was visiting again my junior year during the fall, and I actually got to meet those students, sit in on a class, get to talk to some of the professors, and so that was incredibly helpful if you have the chance to go and visit throughout the school year.
Perfect. And so one thing to note, TKA students, their junior and senior year are allowed 4 excused absences to go on college visits. And then one other question would be, do you have any type of scholarship programs available for students that would be wanting to visit your campus?
No, we don't have a scholarship program, but we do offer a voucher program where we'll help to reimburse your cost of travel to campus up to a certain amount of a flight. And we really use that out of state to draw people because we feel like once you see our campus, it will actually go up on the list of schools that you may consider. And we know that especially when we're in this down in Florida, we need to try to draw people up to Ohio to see what God is doing there.
Perfect. All right, so then I'm curious if one of you could just define what demonstrated interest is, and then if it is in fact important at your institution.
So demonstrated interest is you demonstrating interest in college or a university. And so it's confusing because there's various ways that you can do that, and every school is going to be a little bit different as far as, do they track that? Do they consider that? How heavily do they consider that in the process? But certainly visiting a college campus, if it's a university that is looking at demonstrated interest, that's a really important one. So they're taking attendance, right, to see who was at that college visit or at that event. So that's important. But it also might be things like coming to a college fair, right? So we all go to college fairs, high school visits. So when you have college reps who are coming to visit your high school and you come and you meet with us, that's something we look at just the same as if you come to our campus, right? So at least for SMU, we value that. We don't expect that you come to our campus. We love when you come to our campus, but anytime you come to a visit, an event, even virtual events, if you're signing up for an online Zoom event, we still consider that to be you showing that you're interested. We also, in our application at SMU, have a general essay, but there's a supplemental essay written response where you're answering the question of why SMU. So why am I interested in SMU, right? So just like for parents in the room, when you're applying to a job and you have a resume and a cover letter, that cover letter, that version of that for a college student really is that essay and that supplemental piece where you want to tell us, why are you interested in our school? What do you know about our school? So if you visited, that really helps to inform your knowledge of our school, and it helps to create a stronger essay because it's not just a theoretical place, but it's a place that you've been to, you've talked with us, and hopefully you fell in love with the school and you're passionate about it. So as far as do we track it and how does that work, it does play a role in our process sometimes, not for every student, but admission is competitive, and so when there is a case where we're kind of making those hard decisions, that is a factor that we might consider, right? Has the student visited? What do they know? What have they kind of expressed? Have they come to our campus visits at their high school? Have they come to our visits to your high school, or have you come to our campus as well? Curious for the panel, who here tracks demonstrated interest? Anyone? Okay, Baylor as well, great. Awesome.
Perfect. And then this one is, I'm curious to hear your opinion on it. Do you feel as though a student should select their college based on their major? Pros and cons one way or the other.
It's a typical education response, and yes and no. Because you're going to want to go somewhere that does offer your major, but you're going to want to look beyond just offering that major. Look at what the experiential learning outcomes are. Look at the study abroad opportunities if that's something you're interested in, or research opportunities or internships. Take it the next level and chat with the Alumni Association to see what current alumni that are more recent graduates within the first 5 years, or ones that have been in the field for 30 plus years, what they are up to and how their degree was able to help them out in getting to where they're at. And so you could find that schools, when you're looking at a specific major, might have the expert in X topic in the nation, and if you really want to learn from that individual, it would make sense to apply to that school to be able to learn from them. So that's why it's a yes and no answer for me.
I think that you're absolutely right. One of the things that we have happen at UF is that we have a bunch of professional schools. So we have students who come to us and they know not only undergrad, but graduate school or PhD level or beyond that, because they're thinking, long term. But we also have people who come to us and they have no idea. And it's nice to be able to say, you have room to grow. I would say, however, that if you are assured of what it is that you're interested in doing, and the university that you are looking at does not offer that program, that's probably a good sign that maybe it's not the right place for you. But it's certainly not the only thing. So I think it is a yes or no answer. It's both.
And then to piggyback off of that, could you all just speak to maybe the undeclared or undecided programs that you offer for students that apply to your institutions but really don't know what they want to do? What services are they provided? What experience do they gain?
I can jump in first if you want. We have an amazing Career Connections Center right in the heart of the university. It is a fantastic place to go, whether you know what you want to do or you don't. Definitely, if you do not know what you want to do, this should be your first stop, because students, there are more careers out there than I think most people realize. And there are more possible ways of getting to those careers than I think most people realize. And these are our experts who are going to work with you to figure out not only your strengths and weaknesses, but like what you're passionate about. What can we figure out that you might be passionate about if you're not even sure what that is? And they're going to show you as many open doors as possible. And I think that that is a gift that did not used to be around. As someone who is a little bit older in this group, that is not something that used to exist at these universities. And it's there now. It's fabulous. And I can't tout ours enough. So love that.
We make it sound fancy at the University of Maryland. It's called Letters and Sciences for those that aren't sure of their major, or they applied to a competitive major and aren't admitted directly into it freshman year. So it's great because those advisors know a little bit about each major offered on campus, and they do an excellent job at guiding students to where they should fit. But I will also say there are some majors nationwide where you might want to know that you want to apply to that, because it could be a very competitive process that you need to know as early as your freshman year. They could be something like a nursing major, or it could be a specific school. Say, for example, Michigan with business. You're going to want to know that you want to take that and apply to it directly as a senior in high school for your freshman year. So there are going to be some competitive programs out there. It depends on the institution you're applying to. But if you don't mind not having that major and you're still on the fence on a few different things, it's okay to be able to come in undecided. It's okay to be able to make that process and that decision over the first 2 years and still be able to graduate from majority of the majors within 4 years. And so it's a great time to be able to explore, learn a little bit more, because there is a lot more offered at the college level than you've been able to explore in high school. Just make sure you're not extending that beyond those first 2 years if you don't want to plan on spending more tuition than what you should for 4 years.
I second all of that information that both of these amazing people have said as well. Something that's nice specifically about Baylor is that we don't admit by major, so that may also be something to look into for these colleges that you're considering. Some of them will admit by major, meaning that you have to apply to the school as well as the specific area of study that you want to go into. But at some of the schools like Baylor that don't do that, the nice thing is that it's very flexible. We actually have our own major that's titled undecided. So a lot of students that aren't sure what they want to do will come in, and then there is, like Beth was saying, a lot of work with our career center where we partner with those students, get them plugged into a lot of different types of classes and opportunities to really figure out exactly what they want to do.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, students, it's totally okay if you're undecided. So many of us were undecided when we were going to college and even when we were in college, right? Very common for students to change their mind and change their major. So don't feel like you have to have the pressure of knowing everything, because it's common for students to switch things up. At SMU, we have a great opportunity for students to be able to come in and essentially, in that first year, take different courses, explore, not really have to decide your major until a little bit later. One piece of advice I would give you in addition to the Career Center is go to those career centers early. I always hear from our Career Center staff that students come junior year, senior year, but they very rarely see a first-year student come in. So take advantage of that opportunity early on in college to explore, because that might set you on a path to go pursue a major or a career that you never even knew existed.
And then I'll wrap this up quickly, but we're in that point of the year where we're seeing students that are seniors making their decision to deposit, commit to institutions, and was looking over the data recently, and we're around 1,300 students for next year's freshman class, and about 200 to 250 have declared undecided, to give you an idea of how many of our freshmen come in. But by the time we get to the end of the summer, that really narrows down, as students have maybe put that out there first, and then they start to really narrow it in. And what our Career Services Office does, along with all the other career support or looking at undergraduate majors, is they offer free assessments to students that they can start taking. And there are things that dial in on what are your interests, and what are the things that you would like to do once you're out of college. And then it starts to pack it into information for students where you can start to see, okay, well, here's the 5 majors I should even consider. And then what I always recommend is if you're looking at something in the health sciences, you don't have to be specific and say it has to be biology, but you can start down the path of health sciences in some way, and then you'll still graduate in time as long as you start down that pathway.
So Scott, thanks for adding your 2 cents. It kind of was a perfect segue. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that everyone in the room knows about is our college readiness platform SCORE has a free career assessment that takes about 30 minutes to complete, and will just give a high school student some direction on some potential careers based on their giftings that might be good potential. And really the reason that we have students doing that is hopefully then to take a class that would support those results, to either validate that that's a good fit for them, or to retract that that is in fact not a good fit. We find that most typically happens within our electives housed in our program of distinctions. So there's a lot of different things to take advantage of that will maybe catapult you towards knowing how to utilize the undecided services really well, if that's the case, or potentially even being able to declare a major straight away and then not change it while you're in college. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit into kind of the nuts and bolts of college admissions. Without really a good transition, I'm just going to ask the question, how is an application reviewed at your institution? So everybody does it a little different. So kind of open that curtain up, let us get behind that curtain and see what you guys see, and just fill us in.
ahead and start just because some of us may be similar but different in a couple of other ways. So at Baylor, we do tend to see a lot of applications come in. Just for reference, our freshman class size is about 3,500 students every year, but this year we've received over 55,000 applications. So it's just not possible for us to individually go through every single application, and this is where it becomes really important to be in touch with our office. Get in touch with me if you really are considering Baylor, because as admissions counselors, we're able to look over the applications of students that we've heard from, we've had indicated interest from, just to ensure that everything is good to go and secure before it's reviewed by our admissions committee. So again, you'll turn in all of those items that we need from you. The only things we require is a high school transcript and an essay, but we do have recommended items. And so if you really are considering Baylor as a top choice, we encourage you to submit the recommended items just because that'll help you kind of get your foot up in that application process. And then again, we are a deadline-driven school, so depending on what deadline you're applying to, that application will go before the admissions committee. It's comprised of different leadership members in our admissions office, and they're the ones who ultimately make that final decision.
All right, I'm going to have to roll the sleeves back on this one. So at Maryland, we conduct a holistic review, and we have two deadlines: early action, regular decision. It's much more beneficial for anybody in the room, anybody that ever hears our voices. Early action is the route to go. And so with that, we're reviewing not only for admission to the university, we're looking over for admission to special programs like honors, our scholars programs. We're also looking at scholarships. We're looking at competitive majors. So there's a lot that goes into it. A student doesn't find out until February 1st of a decision. So between November 1 and February 1, we are in the thick of things looking over stuff. Actually, my wife hates it. Her birth month is November, but I am always the busiest during November and the first weeks of December. It's almost like Halloween hits, and then next thing I know, I am looking at Christmas. I feel like I'm in the nightmare before Christmas every fall. And so with that, we're looking at your academics, we're looking at the grades, any rigor, trends within that as well. And then we'll look at the letters of recommendation, your essays, we'll look at your activity sheet as well. Make those decisions. We go all in. So it's not specific where even though I cover Florida, I will look at international students or students from other states. After those first 6 weeks of the first review, that's when we look over our territory. Then we go off and enjoy the holidays. All the special programs get to look over your applications. Then we get back, make sure they made the proper decisions, and release everything but scholarships to you. Once we let you know you've been admitted, that's when we look over the scholarship side of things. And so it is a pretty intense process with it, but we are looking over all of them. So we had 60,000 students apply this past year for around 4,500 spaces. Had a little over 70 people reviewing applications, and so it is a pretty deep team that looks over things.
So the University of Florida is a little more similar to the University of Maryland in that we do a holistic review. There's both an academic and a non-academic component to what we review. We do read every application that comes in thoroughly. The academic side will look at not only your grades that go through the end of your junior year, and you may have started in middle school with high school credit, so keep that in mind, students. We will see the classes you intend on taking your senior year, although we will not take those grades into account because we won't have them. We will also have to take test scores into account because we are a public state university. If you are a public state university within the grand state of Florida, you must have test scores. UF has no preference as to whether or not you take the SAT, the ACT, or the brand new CLT test, which was new this year. And we will super score you, which means we will take your highest sections if you take the same test more than one time. That is the score that we will look at. On the non-academic side, you're going to be completing your application through the Common App. We are not the only public state university within the grand state of Florida that uses the Common App, so get used to that. You're going to be seeing a lot. There'll be specific questions that each university will ask. You'll be giving a short answer, an essay question. You'll be filling in activities. There's areas for honors and awards. There's a space for any additional information that you want to tell us that's optional, or you could give us life circumstances that you think would be important. I always tell students, You need to be very specific and detailed in what you're writing in there, because we do not do letters of recommendation and we do not do interviews. Just to let you know the reality of it, we received over 74,000 applications this past year. We, in the long run, will have a freshman class of around 7,000 or just under that. So there's a lot that we need to know about you, and being specific and detailed in that is going to be helpful. The tip that I always say that I think should be good for any university that's going to do a holistic review is that if you were to take the written part of your application and print it out and remove your name from it and stick it up on the walls of your high school, and your friends walk by and read it, is it too general where they can't figure out who wrote it, or would they know it's yours? Because if they know that it's yours, you've done it right. So we take all of this into account. UF is going next year, for the first time in a long while, to early action. Early action is not binding. It means that you still get to make your choice. It is not, you're required to attend. But we will have an earlier date where we will be letting you know that you've been admitted, and that will be in January. We will also have regular decision. I don't know that I'm going to say that what the difference is between the two yet, as far as you should definitely apply here versus there, because it's new for us for a long while. I would guess that still early action would be a great way to go. But because we are a deadline-based university, and a lot of universities are, I say really make sure that you put whatever deadlines that you are following into your phone, into every calendar that you have on the refrigerator, everything, so that you follow through, because the universities that do follow deadlines are very serious about that.
So for SMU, we're very holistic in our process as well. We do require and put a lot of weight on your counselor recommendations, so it's important to know your counselors. They're going to advocate for you. You have wonderful counselors here, and we really care about what they're telling us about you. So obviously we're reading your essay. That's very important. We don't do interviews, so your essay is your opportunity to tell us who you are beyond those numbers. We are test optional, so you do not have to submit test scores. When we say we're test optional, we're truly test optional, meaning, when I say that, sometimes students worry that, you say you're test optional, but are you actually? And so if you don't submit test scores, it's perfectly fine. We just simply review everything else. It's just we don't consider your test scores. So there's no harm in not submitting test scores to us. We don't make any assumptions about anything. We just look to see, do you submit them or do you not? And if you don't, it's all good. But we're looking at all those different factors. We're looking at your rigor as well, so your curriculum all the way through senior year. So it's very important to challenge yourself. Important to note that we're only considering you within the context of your high school. So we're not comparing you, for example, to students at the Benjamin School or Dwyer or any other school. We're looking at your school, what courses are offered, how many rigorous courses do you have available to you, what have you taken, your upward grade trends, right? Maybe you didn't do so well in that first year, but then you've got that upward momentum, you're challenging yourself. Anytime you have circumstances like that, of course, you want to talk about that so that you give us that context. But all these things are holistically considered. I'm the regional director based in Florida, so I actually live here in Florida. Like Olander, I'm based in the state of Florida. That means that I read your application. I'm the first person who will get your Florida application, but it's a whole team effort, so we have committees and various folks that are having eyes on your application. And we always say, I borrow this from a colleague, a friend of ours who's not here, but I always hear her saying that we are the office of admission, not the office of denial. We're looking for reasons to admit you, right? And so help yourself by helping us by being as clear and detailed in that application as possible. When we're looking at your application, we're considering you for scholarships, for different scholarship programs, as well as honors programs. So we're advocating for you. If you're standing out for, hopefully good reasons, then we will potentially invite you to like certain programs, and we do all that together. And then scholarship consideration happens at the same time, but those notifications go out a little bit later, like Olander was saying, towards the spring.
And so we would be, I was the one who raised the hand for the rolling admission. If you don't know what rolling admission is, it means that when an application is open for an institution, that institution, once everything is submitted, will roll on the decision. So they won't hold it for a date or come back at a later time and pull the applicants, but instead, if you meet specific criteria in a holistic review type of environment, you will be admitted to the university. And you'll find that a lot of times with your smaller institutions, maybe even some mid-sized institutions. But the reason we do that is because we don't participate in the Common App, and so every student that applies to Cedarville applies to Cedarville. It's not an app that we share with any other institution. And a lot of that's because of what I referenced earlier, and that's the specifics of what we're looking for in terms of the balance of both the academic as well as the spiritual. And so when it comes to reviewing, it's a holistic review in the sense of looking at your grades, looking at your transcripts. We're seeing on average that a lot of students now are coming into their freshman year of college with 16 credits that are earned in dual enrollment, or they've done extensive work in AP. And so we're evaluating that also. And then we're also looking at and reading through a statement of faith. And we also ask for a church leader recommendation where a Christian leader in the life of you, the student, can speak on your behalf and say, this is who you are, this is your character, and this is why you would be a good fit for Cedarville. So that's our process, a little more unique. And if you look at schools similar to Cedarville, I think that you'll find a lot of them are similar to our process with the rolling admission. And we open our application in June, and then we're admitting students if we can get transcripts from schools, if their guidance office is open or their college counseling office is open. We'll start admitting them heading into the summer months and into the fall. So that's a little bit different and unique about our type of process for admission.
Wonderful. So the next category that we're going to talk about is leadership, extracurricular activities, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but any other thoughts on recommendations? So you guys have highlighted how activities fit into your application review, but maybe just weigh in a little bit on how leadership might weigh into your review, as we have at least everyone in the room has one more year of high school left to positively influence their application. And so how does leadership factor in?
Well, of course, not everybody can be a leader. No, when you're talking about thousands of applications, not everybody is. We love to see it, but a lot of times leadership is often overlooked in some different activities that you may participate in. So yes, it's obvious, president, vice president, treasurer of a club or organization, or founder of an organization. Those are obvious leadership positions. But maybe you hold a part-time job, you're shift leader. Maybe you stay at home after school with your siblings and take care of your siblings till your parents get home. Or maybe there's somebody that's elderly that might need some assistance in your home that you help care for. That is all leadership. They're all leadership activities, all activities you should be proud of and to be able to put down on your application and share with us. We only know what you share with us, and so we are admissions application readers, not mind readers. So please share that information with us because it helps us when we have specific things that we're looking for. We love the leadership. We have special programs we can put you in. If you don't show it, that's okay. You can still become a leader while on our campuses as well. And so I do encourage it if you can take advantage of it. But if not, that doesn't mean you're going to be denied from every school you apply to.
Would throw in there that the other area that we like to look for is growth. So if again, not everyone can be the president of whatever that they're in, but you can show growth through an activity or activities or whatever it is that you've chosen to do. So a lot of students, for example, play a sport of some kind, but not everyone can be the team captain, but I bet you've shown growth within that sport. And growth can be both improvement in what you've done, but also in the way that you work with the others maybe who are coming up behind you. So keep that in mind. Growth is another important thing that we do look for when it comes to activities.
All right. And then on that note, can you just answer the question, is there one experience that is more valuable than the other? Olander, you kind of alluded to this, but is there any greater value on a part-time job compared to a summer enrichment program? Kind of the tagline that we use in our office is utilize your free time well, maximize your free time, do something constructive. Any other thoughts on that?
To be honest, do what you're passionate about. Don't do something, go out of the way, come up with things that you think that we want to see. We will all appreciate you showing us and displaying what you're passionate about through different activities that you're taking advantage of. If you're not a summer enrichment person because you're taking advantage of athletics, that's okay. No? And so you're doing something that you enjoy and you're showing us, and that's how you can be part of our class as one of the small pieces of the puzzle that'll make our overall freshman class.
Hi. We have students who are very deep into one thing. Like they've taken karate since they were 2, and now they are like Olympic level and black belt and whatever's beyond that. Grand. Wonderful. And they're going to be showing us a lot of that information. And then we have people who have a lot of different interests and have been involved in a wide variety of things. And both are okay and both are good. And like my colleague said before, we have plenty of students who work after school, or they do go home and they help take care of the siblings. But again, you need to tell us these things. We're not going to be able to call you up and say, can you clarify this for me? So the example I always give when I give a talk is, you're not going to write down as an activity, tennis, grade 9 through 12. And then, that was me not dropping the mic. Don't drop the mic on that. What you would say instead is something like tennis grade 9 through 12, JV and varsity, like to mentor younger students. Because here's the thing, if you just put tennis 9 through 12, I don't know if you're watching tennis, playing tennis, or you found an old Wii somewhere and you dusted that off. So you got to be specific. And we don't have preferences because you're unique and every person does something different. And that's okay too.
Jump in. I'm glad you mentioned the tennis and then the mentoring other individuals. So a lot of times you might struggle and say, well, what can I do community service related? Well, going back to your passions, if you love tennis and you mentor children or you mentor those that want to get involved in tennis, there's your passion. You're killing two birds with one stone, your volunteer work, and you're still sticking with something you love to do. So that's a perfect example right there. Thank you.
Perfect growth. It shows perfect growth. So you started off as a player and now you're teaching others. Growth.
Yeah, and I would just add too, I know there's a lot of pressure, students feeling like, I have to get admitted and I have to do all these activities. There's no mathematical equation that we have where we're like, this many activities times this many hours equals admission, right? That's not a thing. I think one regret that I have, honestly, when I was your age, I wish I would have done more of just going out there into my community and like volunteering. So, parents, this is where you can help your students too. In your networks, if you have people that who are doing different careers, help your students to make that connection. Hey, maybe you want to become a doctor, right? Well, you don't know until you go actually see a doctor. It's different from what's on TV, right? So go out there and experience this for yourself, but know that there's no perfect set of activities, no magical number. We're very holistic, and we want students ultimately who are well-rounded. Comes down to you being first and foremost academically strong in the classroom, but also someone who ideally is a leader and is engaged in diverse activities where you're really passionate about whatever it is you're doing.
Okay, so we've talked hypothetical regarding leadership and extracurriculars, but I've got a question around intellectual curiosity, and I'm wondering if you could share an example of an application that you've read during your career that has displayed intellectual curiosity very well, and you don't need to say names. Just a concrete example of somebody that you read their application and you could just tell that they might be a good fit for the major they selected because of the thing that they had done or the book that they had read.
I don't think mine's intellectual curiosity though, but it does kind of go along that line in terms of the one that stuck out to me the most is I've been doing this for, 17 years, and there was a student that within the last 5-6 years really got onto this style shoe movement. My son's 16, he loves like the Nike the high-end shoes, all those things. Well, this kid was like 7-8 years ago when this was first coming out and it was becoming a big thing. Well, his intellectual curiosity was, how do I make money doing this? Like, my parents aren't going to keep giving me money to do this, so I need to figure it out. So he actually was one of the trendsetters in starting his own online company, buying and reselling shoes. And so when he shared that on the application and in the process, you're like, wow, here's a kid that, his grades were, I would say his grades were solid, but they weren't like 4.2 weighted scale. But it was, look at this entrepreneur, he's investing time, and this guy's going to be a world changer someday. And so he actually has ended up being that. He's very, very successful. He's a graduate now of our institution. But that's someone where I look at that intellectual curiosity of saying, here's something I'm passionate, I enjoy, and then I'm going to now take this and be an entrepreneur with this and see how I can maybe make a living doing this. And then he ventured off and now he has splinter companies that do similar things like that. It's not one you would recognize, but it's one that definitely has made an impact, and he's made a lot of money.
Example is actually pretty close to that as well. This is actually a student that I worked with this year from the state of Florida. Not this school, but somewhere close by. And he is just absolutely amazing. Got in touch with me at the beginning of the year before the application even opened, just to share his resume and his passion. Essentially, he wants to go into business and be an entrepreneur. And he has taken the ACT and SAT. He has a pretty good GPA, but his school is definitely really competitive. And so I think he was a little worried about how his grades would stack up against everyone else. But something that was unique about him is that he actually started his own company his sophomore year of high school within the business entrepreneurship field. And something he does now is actually host online trainings for students and young adults to teach them about the stock market and how to invest. And I knew nothing about that, still have a lot to learn. But just as he was even describing his passion to me, I just could tell that it was something that lit him up. He was so knowledgeable in the area because he really cared about it. And so this was an example of a student that was really chasing after what made him unique and what made him stand out. And again, I think that came through in my conversations with him as well as his application.
And the most enjoyable section of our application actually are 5 short statements that we require in addition to everything else that's on the Comment app. And this is where we really get an idea of how students view things and how they tackle different issues. Some of the questions are, in addition, or one of the most interesting things in research that I found is, and they just finish the sentence, or outside of my major, my other academic interests are, or last Thursday I, and they just finish the sentences, and that's where we really get an idea of how creative students are and what they are up to in addition to their activities and resume sheet.
Wonderful. So we've had some conversations about academics and testing so far. It's just naturally come out in the admissions process. Go figure. But Dave, you kind of alluded to, the foundational piece of an application is going to be grades. Are they a good academic fit for the institution? But does anyone else have anything other to say about how much grades factor into the admissibility at their particular school?
I'll jump in for you with. So we do indeed do a holistic review, as I said, but if you think about it like a set of scales, the academics are going to weigh heavier. Now, that does mean that if you were to remove the non-academic part of the holistic review, boom, it's going to bottom out. So you do have to have that balance. Grades are important, and like Dave was saying, we know what your school offers, and we expect to see that you've chosen to challenge yourself based on what you can do here through your school. We're not going to compare apples to oranges. So just like Dave, I am not going to sit there and say, well, I know what Suncoast is doing, and I expect to see the same thing at King's. That would make no sense. You have different programs and different opportunities. When we do our GPA recalculation, we try to make it everything as even as possible, because some of the schools in Palm Beach County are on a 6-point scale. Some are on a 4-point scale. Most of the state is on a 4-point scale. So we put everyone on a 4-point scale. And then we bump up your GPA when we do our recalculation based on whether your class is honors, AP, IB, ACE, or dual enrollment. And we give them all honors a half point, but everything else 1 full point bump up. But again, we know that a 4.2 at one school is going to be excellent, or a 4.7 might be excellent at a different school based on the opportunities available there. And we make it our job to know that. So that's something to keep in mind, that yes, you need to keep challenging yourself with your choices that you are making. But we're not going to expect you to have something that is not available to you. I always say that UF is a school that likes to give off a lot of opportunities. We expect to see that you took advantage of the opportunities available to you in high school as well.
And to put it briefly, you've heard of test optional, essay optional, letter of recommendation optional. You've never heard of transcript optional schools that you apply to, right? That should give you an idea of how important grades are in the application process for admissions.
Well said. I'm going to put that one in my back pocket. Okay, so then, Beth, you alluded to, although senior year grades don't count for admissibility, course selection does factor into the admission decision. Does anybody else want to expand on if senior year grades count for admissibility at your school? How so? And then I think we'll just stop there.
can start out with this one. So I will say for some of our students, there's a couple of different scenarios where your grades senior year might really help or come in really handy. The biggest one that I can think of is in the case that you might be put on a wait list or maybe given a deferred option. So again, just because of the sheer amount of students and applications Baylor is receiving and the limited number of spots we have available, if we don't know too much about a student, or maybe say you haven't done a ton of recommended items in your application, there's no demonstrated interest there, we really aren't sure if you're interested in Baylor, you may receive a decision that is what we call deferred. And so in this case, if you apply under that early action or November 1st category, we're just saying that we're gonna push your application down the line a little bit just to receive some more information from you to make sure that you're interested in Baylor and it's somewhere that you would be a good fit. So I work with a number of students every single year that might be deferred either for grade reasons or just because we haven't seen a lot of interest. And in that case, we always require them to go ahead and submit that fall semester senior year grades once they are re-reviewed at that point. So again, it's important to make sure, I know senioritis is something that kicks in inevitably for everyone, but just make sure that you are still doing well in these classes, you're caring about these grades. And again, the point of these classes is to help you get equipped and ready for college. So there's a lot to be learning and definitely things that are going to contribute to your success once you're at the university.
All right. And then let's just maybe answer the question about standardized testing a little bit. So we're well aware that UF is the only institution on the panel that does require it. However, I believe all of you would accept it if a student would submit it. And so can you just unpack, Beth, you had mentioned that there are 3 test types that UF will accept. The other institutions on the panel, which test types do you accept? And do you prefer one? And how many should a student take?
I can start. Yeah, we accept all 3, ACT, SAT, and the CLT. And we're test optional also. And where a test can really help a candidate is if you're right on the fence with your grades, but you come in with a solid test score, it can show us that the aptitude is there, and then we'll encourage you to work a little bit harder to get those grades up. But if you were to be admitted as test optional, then you were to submit a test score later, we have a no harm policy where it will not harm your financial aid on the back end, nor will it necessarily move you to a point of not being admissible to the institution, because in our review of you as a candidate for the institution with a test optional policy, we have decided that you are admissible and you will come. So even if a test score comes to us later and it's maybe below what we would have liked to seen back in the day when we were test required, we're not going to rescind that admission. But it will help you if you have a strong test score with your financial aid in the way that we approach our financial aid process.
So for SMU, we are, again, test optional. We do super score as well. We accept the ACT or the SAT tests. My general advice for SMU is if you're a strong test taker, there's really no reason not to submit a strong test score. If you're not a strong test taker, definitely that can negatively impact scholarship consideration. So not just admission consideration, but scholarship consideration as well. And so, you know, it's a conversation certainly to have with your counselors and with us if you're not sure about should submit it or should I not. My general advice here in the state of Florida, because the in-state public universities require test scores, definitely prepare, take the tests, apply to those schools. But when you're looking at those schools that don't require it, you know, make that decision, should I or should I not? If you look on our websites and on our brochures and things, usually you'll find a middle 50% profile for our schools where you'll see that middle 50% GPA and middle 50% test score range. The advice I've heard from many schools, and I would say the same for SMU, is if your test scores are on the higher end of that middle 50% or higher, then you know you're probably good submitting those scores. If it's on the lower end, certainly if it's below that middle 50% test score range, probably better off not submitting it if it's a test optional university.
We take any of them. We have no preference. We will super score you, but you have to take it. And I have no qualms about someone who takes more than one type of test. We have plenty of students who take both the SAT and the ACT, and now the CLT. We also have plenty of students who have taken the same test multiple times. I'm not going to sit there and go, well, shame, they took it 5 times. I'm going to say, wow, how persistent are they? And honest to goodness, I'm not going to see that. I'm going to see your top super score. So that's what I'm going to be looking at. So unfortunately, testing is part of the state's compliance. We have to do it. And all 12 of the public state universities have to require those.
Yeah, so we will take both SAT and ACT. We can receive the CLT, but to be honest, we don't use it in our review. I saw one CLT report this year. That's why I said we can receive it. It comes in through the email, but it doesn't get paired to our system to review applicants for, because we are test optional. And so with that, if a student indicates they would like to have their test scores considered, they must submit official scores. So on the Common Application, you can self-report your scores. Sometimes here in Florida, students get confused with that process. They self-report and they say they want their scores included, but they don't send the official report. And then February 1st comes around and they don't find out a decision from Maryland. Why? Because you never sent your official scores. For those that went test optional this year, it's about 52% of the 60,000 did not submit a test score. We don't have time to sit there and think, why did they not submit a test score? Does not matter. One less thing for me to review, helps me make me more efficient throughout the process. So that is great. As far as mid-ranges, 1420 to a 1530 was our mid-range on the SAT, 32 to a 35. Before you gasp, think about the test optional policy. The higher scores are the ones that tend to submit their test scores. So I've been with Maryland since 2016. You should feel confident in your competitiveness in that 1350 to 1500 range for admission, that 30 to 34 range for the ACT. They are super scored. But if you're looking at scholarships and you're not above those mid-ranges, you should feel confident you won't receive a scholarship, because it's really, truly that top quarter that is what is going to be the most competitive for our merit scholarships.
And then similar to quite a few of the other schools, Baylor is also test optional. I think, as Dave had said earlier with SMU, we do not look at those students who don't submit a test score and dock them by any means. There's a whole internal system for how we try to make sure everyone is on a level playing field. We also, Baylor, does not take test scores into consideration for the merit-based scholarship. So the big place it's going to help you if you do decide to submit them is just with that admissions decision. Now, the only difference I will say with that is that Baylor has some specific scholarship programs that students can either apply to or be invited to, and these do often take that test score into consideration, and the requirements for what score you need for that specific program is listed online. So if you have any questions about that, you know you want to go into these scholarship programs, come find me after. I can point you in the right direction or even give you an admissions packet that has that direct link.
All right, and this is going to be our last scripted question that I'm going to ask. College essays have been alluded to throughout the evening. Can you just articulate a college essay that really stood out, or maybe something that you're looking for? So we've got some younger students in the room, so this is going to be on the horizon, but I think we can summarize that most college applications require an essay, so maybe just give us your thoughts on those essays, being that they are the most personal part of your application, like Beth earlier said.
So if you are applying through the Common App, which UF and a lot of the Florida universities take, and you believe you said you'd use Common App as well, they'll give you like 6 or 7 prompts to choose from, one of which is choose your own topic. I am a former English teacher. I love a good English essay. Do not give me an English essay. I am not admitting Lady Macbeth to UF. I'm trying to admit you. So whatever it is that you are choosing to write about, if you are not writing about yourself so that I can learn more about you, you've done it wrong. Do it again. I don't care if you're writing about the person who's most inspiring to you in your life. Great, how did that change you? How did you grow? How did you change? How did you learn something about yourself? And that's going to be really important. One of the better ones that I've read, and I've read a ton like everybody else has, I had one that really spoke to me, and it was about the Oxford comma. And why the Oxford comma? was so very important. And then the student was able to take it and apply it to different areas of growth within his life, and he was able to use that Oxford comma, which is that comma that goes after the third item. I'm a former English teacher. I like the Oxford comma. It really spoke to me. But I liked how clever it was because he was able to use something and then talk about his life with it. And that was the important thing. I learned something about this student and not just about his feelings about the Oxford comma. So whatever it is that you're choosing to write about, you need to be teaching me something about you. Make sense?
2 words, shower oranges. Yes, that's exactly what I said. What? And there was an essay that a student submitted about shower oranges. Has anybody ever tried a shower orange in here? All right, we're striking out on that one. So this was a student actually from Florida, of course, with oranges, who through research found out that citrusy fruits taste much better while consumed in the shower. And so that was in the intro paragraph right there. I love essays about food, and so it immediately caught my attention. Now, I'm not encouraging everybody to do about food, but if you're thinking about Maryland, maybe food would be a good one to throw in there for you. But this student talked about something that was sort of out of the box that they wanted to try out. They did so, and they ended up enjoying it, very similar to what they expect to be doing on a college campus. Is that there would be a club or organization or even a major or minor that they hadn't thought of before, and they'd be willing to try that out to see if it's something they could be interested in. And I really enjoyed that essay because it told me a little bit about that applicant. And so there you go with your shower oranges, and we'll see how many of you all try them within the next week.
So I'll just add on to what Beth was saying about, we read so many essays about people other than you, right? So we want to know about you. So we always talk about, especially grandparents, we read so many essays about learning about grandma and grandpa, or maybe your pastor, or your baseball coach, or whatever it is. And we come away like, hey, we want to admit your pastor. We want to admit grandma. But you've told us nothing about you. So the best advice I can give you is just be real, be direct, be authentic. Authenticity matters so much in this. The right college will find you. So one of the favorite essays I've read, it was from a young lady from Florida. She referred to herself as the 4'11" Taekwondo tigress. And so it was this amazing story about how she started doing martial arts years ago, and she almost quit when she first started. She was a young girl because she was the only female who was in her martial arts class or the gym or whatever it was. And so she felt kind of intimidated, and she almost gave up, but she had a really good talk with her family and decided, you know what, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to go through it. And years later, she has won all these awards and tournaments, and she's this like master martial artist. In fact, the council recommendation said, she's sweet, she's amazing, but you never ever want to meet her in a Taekwondo match. She will destroy you, and I'm not kidding. And so this essay talked about how, it was very direct. It was like, when people see me, they might at first see this 4'11", thin, smaller girl who maybe doesn't look very intimidating, but I want you to know who I'm going to be in my daily life at your college, right? It's that 4'11" Taekwondo tigress, that same person that has this black belt, that's earned this, that has persisted, who is resilient. That's who I'm going to be. I'm going to stand on that stage. I'm going to be a valedictorian. I'm going to go to your honors programs. I'm going to pursue this career that I'm passionate about. And she said, I'm not sure what my major will be. And frankly, that's okay that I'm undecided. But whatever I do, know that I'm going to put my best foot forward, literally. And I'm going to be this amazing, tigress on your campus. And that just left me really feeling so confident that this student, despite not knowing what her major will be, she's going to be great. And that's the kind of student that we want.
Say something too. Each of you students have something that uniquely sets you apart. You're each so uniquely made with your own set of key attributes and talents and passions. And so at the university you're going to attend, at least with Baylor, we want to make sure that you're not going to be just a good academic fit, but also a good mission fit as well. Our job is to make sure that if you come to Baylor, you are going to succeed, you are going to find your people, and you're going to grow. And so throughout that essay application, that is really our chance to get to know you outside of academics and really see who you are and what you stand for. And so I don't want you to walk away thinking that, oh my gosh, the essay means so much, I'm gonna lose sleep over it, it's so overwhelming. But I do want you to know that it is an important part, again, just to let us know who you are and make sure that you're going to fit in at Baylor or wherever you do end up.
It's been all said so well. I would say, I think the theme there is you need to tell the story of who you are, why you're unique, what your passions are, and why you're pursuing a college or university. And I think that summarizes, and that's exactly the same things that we're looking for.
Wonderful. So you've listened so well that we're going to turn the floor over to you to see what questions you all have. We'll take questions for about the next 10 minutes. So Mrs. Dufner and I will just walk around. You can just raise your hand. We'll hand you the mic, and then the floor is yours. So gather those thoughts, and we have our first hand. Beautiful.
I was just wondering, with regard to non-school sports and activities, say piano lessons, tennis lessons, and whatnot, how is that not credited, because there's not credits given, but how is that applied, and how do we let you know that, and is that checked upon, and how do we confirm that he's been taking private tennis lessons for 5 years, or that?
That's a great question. We have no way to check. No, we're every one of our schools, when you apply, you're more than likely going to be bound by our honor code. No, when you apply, so we're assuming and hoping that you are being honest and truthful in everything that you put down on the application. We're not going to sit there and call up and say, is it true that so-and-so did this X activity, Y activity? If you think about how many applications we all review, it'd be impossible to do so and also make a decision and get it out on time. So hopefully you're being honest. You're not using different systems like a chat GPT or something to create a resume for you. And they're actually true activities you're involved in, but we are going to take your word on it.
And I think one thing to consider is the activity description itself. In that, you can discern if somebody has a working knowledge and has grown, like you said, Beth, through the opportunity. So that's another type of indicator.
Yeah, and just wanted to add too, we require one counselor recommendation. So there are cases where, we're looking for that consistency, right? The same things you're talking about in your essay are things we're going to see your counselor telling us about. And when there's discrepancies and there's, things that maybe seem off, we see that. So, we're seeing lots of applications. We know your school too, so chances are we know the kinds of clubs and activities that are offered at your school. But yeah, we want you to be honest, and you should be honest, and it's important to be honest because again, the right college will find you. But you owe it to yourself, to your parents, to your God, to the folks that care about you, to be yourself in this process, and don't be anyone other than yourself.
How frequently does the common application change, and when seasonally does the current version get released?
So usually in the summer, the essay prompts come out. They've been the same for the past couple of years. Once in a while, they'll throw out a question and put in a new one. But if you are currently a junior, you could get started this summer on kind of like getting ahead on working on your essay ahead of time. Now, within the Common App, each university has their own section where they're going to ask their own individual type questions. Like, so I'm sure some of the University of Maryland things are different from what UF asked for, but there's going to be some overlap, and I bet we have the same 7 essay prompts for you to choose from. So because they released those in the summer, and they've been consistently pretty much the same, you could even start looking now if you are interested in that. And as far as most of the actual applications going live, we go live like around the second week of August. Most colleges go, if they're not rolling, they're going to go around sometime in August.
And then just one more tidbit here at TKA regarding the Common App. That's something that we encourage and walk our juniors through. So next week we'll be with our juniors. They'll get to create their Common App, and then we'll get just a good give them some launching information so then they can use their free time over the summer to complete it.
Hey, can you talk about what the transfer admission process looks like for maybe students who either don't make their first choice or make a different decision after the first year out of high school?
With the University of Florida, we have plenty of students who come to us with AP, IB, ACE, or dual enrollment credits. So they're coming in with some credits to begin with. We have some people who are coming in with their high school AAs already earned. And again, we're not going to expect that from you if that is not something that is offered through your school. So keep that in mind. We do have students, they all have to apply as freshmen. If you have a high school AA and you were not admitted through the process, we will give you the opportunity to take that application and move it over into the transfer file. The way that transfer admissions work within the University of Florida, and I cannot speak to USF or FSU, every school does their own thing. If you have 11 or fewer credits of college credits after high school graduation, then you can apply as a freshman. If you have hit 12 credits, after high school graduation, you have to wait until you have a total of 60 credits in order to transfer in. When you're getting close to that point, that's when you do go ahead and apply as a transfer applicant to the university. And then you are applying not only to the university as a whole, but to your college specifically as well.
That transfer route honestly might open up more doors. And it used to be the stigma that, all right, you're going to a local, state, or community college because you couldn't get in anywhere else. That's not the case nowadays. I also review transfer applications, and I can't tell you how many students are transferring in, at least to the University of Maryland, that we're towards the top of their class, that they might not have known what they wanted to get involved in at first, or maybe they did know, but wanted to save a few dollars while doing so, and have that in the state of Maryland through the community college, that guaranteed agreement, which there could be something similar here within Florida, the state system, as far as different agreements with those local organizations, the state colleges. So it's an excellent opportunity. A student isn't considered a transfer student until they take at least 12 college credits after completing high school for the University of Maryland. And so not that bad of a route, and it's not what it used to be where you're seen as a failure coming in, and at the end of the day, what does the degree show on the wall when you put it up in your office? Where you graduated from, not how you got there.
Yeah, at Cedarville, it's all the same criteria. 12 credit hours would put you at the classification of being a transfer post-high school. And then we don't have a requirement, though, that you have to have so many credits before we would consider you a transfer in. You can transfer in even the second semester once you're out. So if you went to a community college or a different school, had a change of heart, change of mind, or that was just part of the path that you had wanted to pursue anyway, you could even enroll spring semester. And we bring in about 120 to 140 transfers a year over spring term and fall term.
Yeah, just echoing all that, similar process for SMU. The only thing I would add is that as a transfer student, the one thing to certainly be aware of is that because you're already taking college credits, you do have to have more of a sense of what my major is going to be, preparing for the prerequisites for that major, doing your research, because you don't have that same amount of time that a first-year student will have to kind of explore in that first or second year. So it does take more research and preparation in that sense.
Then at Baylor, some things are similar, but we actually do it a little differently. If you have graduated from high school and you take any type of college credit, even if it's just 2 or 3 hours, you would be considered a transfer student. Now, if you take more than 24 college hours at another institution or university, we don't need to see your high school transcript when you apply. You would just send in the transcript from that institution. And then I will also say that Baylor offers some amazing scholarships for transfer students. So often we see students that will wait even just because of financial reasons and then apply as a transfer student either after a semester or a full year to obtain those specific scholarships.
I do. Competing at the table. Can you talk each a little bit about DE credits versus AP, and if one has a better weight than the other, and if there's a minimum that you're looking at, as well as being a well-rounded student, but is there a certain number that we're looking at trying to achieve?
can just start it and we'll go down. So Baylor does not have like a specific set number that students need or one that is weighed more heavily than the other. I think our biggest thing is that we want to make sure these credits students are taking are able to transfer into the university. So we're trying to be here to advocate for y'all and help you out to bring those credit hours in. I will say the biggest distinction I see is that for dual enrollment, as long as you have passed that course in high school, we will accept it for credit. Whereas with AP, we are going to need a specific score on the AP exam, normally a 3, 4, or a 5 to take it as credit. So if you're trying to figure out which one to do, I always encourage dual enrollment just because it's easier, but totally up to the student.
And there's no preference with Maryland as far as level between the two. And I'll give you an example. If I told you IB is going to be the highest out of all of them, you don't have that offered here. So you'd feel at a disadvantage, right? So that's why anything ACE, AP, IB, dual enrollment, honors, for our admission review purposes, are going to be considered on the same level. Sure, you can go into the weeds of the thick of things and say, okay, this does this and this does that. But for competitiveness, for rigor, what you're challenging yourself with, any one of those 5 will be competitive for our admission standards.
As I've said, we do look at each high school individually. So again, not all schools are going to offer the same thing. So we do look at them as the same level when it comes to our GPA recalculation and as is rigor. When it comes to transferring credits in, once you're at the university, we will take up to 60 dual enrollment credits and up to 45 AP, IB, or ACE credits. That is a conversation that happens with your academic advisor when you sit down, because they're going to look at what you're thinking about majoring in, what your grade was, and what your score was on your test. So the example I always give is if you're really into the idea of becoming an engineer and you took AP Calculus AB and you earned an A on it and you earned a 3 on the test. Well, 3 is passing, but you have to really be strong in calculus to be an engineer. They may say, we may need you to take that over again. So that's something that we don't look at your AP test scores as far as the Office of Admissions goes. But when it comes to earning credits, that is a conversation that you have with your academic advisor.
Yeah, similar for SMU to what's been said. I would just say dual enrollment gets a little bit tricky because, it's a great thing because college coursework, there's, lots of options and variety, but the challenge with it is that not all the courses you might take through dual enrollment are necessarily core subject area courses. So, when we're looking at it, we're looking to see if you're taking a dual enrollment class, getting it, or any sort of college credit, right? If it's like a core subject like math, social studies, things like that, English, that is something that we'll consider, of course, favorably. But if you're taking some sort of like elective, something that's not really like a core subject area class, then we may view that differently, and so that's where it gets tricky, and you have to kind of determine the transfer course equivalencies. I'm sure most of us probably have on our websites, I know SMU certainly does, a transfer course equivalencies page where you can click on your state, find the college. It's not going to be an exhaustive list that shows every single college class in the world. That would take more than a full-time job to keep up with that. But it'll show you what courses have transferred previously, how they transfer. Frankly, transferring in-state is always going to be, for most universities, an easier process, particularly if they have direct transfer agreements, because out-of-state colleges, it's really just a case-by-case, course-by-course basis. But same as was said, AP, IB, dual enrollment, all those things we value. So when I'm looking at an application, I'm not just looking at the GPA, but I'm looking at, what sort of course is it, the extra rigor, because there's grade inflation, right? Someone can have a 4.0 perfect score, straight A GPA, but they're taking very weak courses compared to peers who might have very, very strong curriculum. They're taking those APs, those IBs, those dual enrollment, whatever it might be. GPA is a little bit lower. So that's why there's humans in this process and not robots doing this work, right? We see it, we see the upward grade trends. We're evaluating that holistically. But in terms of how they actually transfer over for dual enrollment credits or any sort of college credits, that's where it gets kind of tricky.
All right. I'm so sorry, Scott. Go ahead. No, I'm not cutting you off.
Okay.
You speak.
Yeah, so this is a challenging one because Cedarville has over 1,000 students in dual enrollment, and the state of Ohio funds dual enrollment very aggressively. So that was part of what got us started on this path 10 years ago, and it's just grown. We have several students in Florida taking our dual enrollment courses, and along with what was mentioned, it's very important that if you take dual enrollment, that you take it in gen eds. Because those are the highly transferable classes, even to state institutions in Florida and other schools. The most pragmatic, I get asked this question a lot by school leaders, school administrators. They say, well, which one should we do? And I said, well, that's really up to you and your faculty and what you want your curriculum to be. If you want it to be AP, if you want it to be dual enrollment, whatever the options are. But on a pragmatic sense, what I see at our university at least is that we are seeing a growth and a trend moving where dual enrollment credits are coming in at a higher rate than AP credits. And I think that that's probably because of what's happening in the state of Ohio. And I also think it's the pragmatic reason that you take the class, you get the grade, the course transfers, versus what universities and how they approach the AP test. I don't have a bias in this, even though we are very invested in dual enrollment. It really is up to the individual school, the family, the student, and the learner. And I support all of it. I think they're all great options to accelerate your learning at a higher level. But it is something that is, if I've noticed in Florida that dual enrollment is a conversation that's maybe a few years behind where I've seen it in the state of Ohio. And that's just simply because of probably the funding mechanisms and the way that things are in place.
Thank you for that. All right, so we want to give our panelists a round of applause as we conclude tonight's event. Our panelists do have about 10 minutes to take any individual questions that you weren't able to ask, but to be respectful of their time, we're just going to leave it at about the 10-minute mark, okay? So feel free to come up and ask any last-minute questions that you have, and we want to just say thank you for coming out this evening.